My name is Isabela Espindola and I work for IWA. We're here today meeting to hold the second session of the launch of the call to action in order to strengthen water and sanitation regulatory matters. So here on the screen, you see all of the speakers of the session. They are truly engaged with this event. Some participated in the first session that took place in the morning, whereas, you meet other speakers during the second session now. So let's go to the next slide. So before we begin with the session, I would like to provide some housekeeping information about today's session. The webinar will be recorded as you see on the screen. It's going to be made available online at the IWA and WHO platforms. It will be provided with the slide deck as well. About the permission, the speakers have given their permission, and any conclusion, hypothesis, or recommendation that you hear in this presentation, it does not necessarily show IWA or WHO opinions. Should you have any questions, please submit your questions through the Q&A box. So the questions are going to be considered by the speakers. If you would like to submit overall remarks or even introduce yourselves, you have to use the chat box function. We're not going to use the raise hand function, and all microphones will be muted. Next. As you might have realized, this session is happening in different languages. So we are using the interpretation for Portuguese, Spanish, and English. You may choose your preferred language following the instructions that you see here on the slide. Very well, we can finally begin with the session now after the housekeeping announcements. So let's go to the next slide. So here is the agenda on how we've organized the session. So we'll begin with the opening session. We're going to have the keynote address that is going to be delivered by video, then a discussion panel. This is the interactive part between the participants that are deemed to be our core partners. We're going to have then the Q&A session, and then WHO will introduce the roadmap for water and sanitation regulation, and then we're going to have the closing session. So I would like to make it available to you, the link, so that you can download the call to action document available in English, Portuguese, Spanish, Russian, Arabic, and French. It's available on the IWA, WHO websites and the call to action website that is going to be made available on the chat. You're going to find the link there as well. So thank you very much. So speaking about the event now, it is the final part, the official launch of the call to action. And it really stresses the urgent need and the development process of this document. It really demonstrates the importance of our society to further foster water and sanitation regulation systems. It provides the perspectives of our partners, the supporting partners and the ones that were more deeply engaged in devising the call to action. Our objective is to mobilize the participation of policymakers, regulators, the participation of all stakeholders who are truly engaged in the call to action platform so that we can carry on with the advocacy actions and all of the actions. We would like to expand engagement as well. Next. The call to action vision, and it's part of the document. It's a two-page document with a quite accessible language. It was developed and it emerged from a bottom-up process. So all of the stakeholders were taken into account. They all contributed for the document in order to really create this environment that aims at improving the political arena to truly facilitate the work of the regulators. So we also address inequalities, aiming at providing a basis, a foundation, especially for the countries that do not have yet regulatory systems for water and for sanitation. And finally, there is another objective that is to strengthen the implementation, both of the regulatory institutions and also the regulators associations implementation. Thank you, Dave. Let's go to the next one, please. There you go. That's the timeline in regards to the development of our call to action. It's not happening overnight. It began 2 years ago, and it materializes in the documents that are going to be made available for you to download. Next. Well, with that in mind, I would like to pass the floor to Bruce Gordon, the head of the Water, Sanitation and Health Unit with the WHO. So he is going to deliver the first speech. So I hand over to you, Bruce Gordon.
Okay, thank you so much, Isabella. And I'm just delighted to be here. As you mentioned from the timeline, we've been waiting for this day for quite some years. So, on behalf of IWA and WHO, I'd like to welcome you all, and also on behalf of the 40 partners or more that actually helped shape this call to action. And I understand many of you are on the call, and we appreciate your participation. Of course, you may be asking the question, why now? And it's true that it's a pivotal time. And of course, we know through our monitoring that billions are without safe water and sanitation services. And we are, of course, not on track as the years go by, less and less on track to meet the SDGs. But I think on top of that, it's worth noting that it's a very challenging time for decision makers. It's, of course, a difficult fiscal environment now. There's many competing priorities. There's a lot going on in the world, frankly. And then layer on top of that climate change and urbanization and increasing inequalities. There's a lot on the plate of anyone that wants to set policies. And so the idea, I think, of the call to action is to really introduce a concept where we feel like there's a real opportunity to make change quickly and effectively. And I think that's despite all these changes we're seeing in the world. And that's why we've seen this real tremendous surge in support for regulation, which goes back years and in fact manifested itself quite significantly following the UN 2023 conference on water. There was a number of announcements by groups like LIS-Water and UNICEF and the WHO International Network on Regulation, RegNet, and others that really kind of seem to consolidate together and create a consensus or agree on a consensus that regulation is one of the most important single things that can be done to support professionalization of water services, which we know is needed. And probably the most exciting thing I have to say is some of the real rapid progress that we're seeing in traction across the world on regulation. And I think that's thanks to regional associations like those on the call. We heard from SOAS this morning, Eastern and Southern Regulatory Association for Africa, and also ADERASA, we're seeing that will speak later today in Latin America. But there's other regions that are very interested in Asia and also in the Middle East. Now we're going to hear, I think, a lot from all the participants about the benefits of regulation, the need to protect consumers. Of course, from a WHO perspective, where I'm coming from, it's about public health, but it's also about human rights that came up strongly this morning in our earlier webinar, and of course the environment as well. But what we'll also hear about is this allowance of sustainable service delivery, because we're challenged with this need to be resilient to many things, including climate, and proper regulation is a real tool to do that. Not the least because it builds investor confidence. So regulation isn't a bureaucratic kind of how do I say, a complication for everyone. It's we've heard this morning, a quiet force that holds the sector together. And when it's not working, we see disastrous results. So I think I'll just close here, Isabella, by just acknowledging once again the very the strength, I guess, of the experience in the room and the learnings that can be shared because of those experiences, and the innovation that we're seeing. So this idea of having a call to action where we can, obviously talk to each other, as you mentioned, from your objectives, but to get this beyond this group, right? To those politicians that might not be understanding the great benefits by taking action now. So it's certainly a prerequisite to anything we want to do on water and sanitation. So welcome everyone, and back to you, Isabella.
Bruce, muito obrigada.
Thank you, Bruce, for the kind words, for your introduction for the second session of the call to action. So Dave, let's see the next slide, please. As was said here in the beginning, we have some keynote addresses, very special contributions for this event. And unfortunately, the Special Envoy on Water and Sanitation, she could not attend in person, but she sent a video to us, and so did Gustavo Saltiel. So Retno Marsudi is the Special Envoy with the UN for water matters, and she's been in this position since November last year. She's in charge of fostering global cooperation on water and sanitation. She's gearing further efforts to take this to international diplomacy to accelerate progress towards SDG 6. A political experience as the Ministry of Foreign Relations in Indonesia. She's been leading initiatives under the UN on water since 2023, and she's trailblazing the path for the next summit we're going to have in 2026. Gustavo Saltiel, he was the strategic board member of Water and Sanitation at the World Bank, as a formerly World Bank member from 2019 to 2024. So he promoted technical knowledge and operational practice in areas such as service regulation. He's been supporting the development of this call to action greatly, addressing water security and climate adaptation as well. And today, he shares his experience, the experience that he earned during his action in Latin America and also in Africa, operating under the World Bank. And he's going to share his experience, especially because of the leadership positions that he had in Argentina. So they both submitted videos. Gustavo was there in the morning session, the first session, but unfortunately, because of his busy agenda, he could not attend. But we have Gustavo's video and both people's video here. So Dave, let's go to the next slide, please.
Colleagues, distinguished participants, I congratulate the WHO and the International Water Association for the launching of the global call to action on strengthening water and sanitation regulatory systems. The global call provides crucial momentum to the global effort of ensuring water and sanitation for all. Despite progress today, more than 2 billion people still lack of access to safe drinking water. More than 3.5 billion still lack of access to safely managed sanitation. To meet our global commitment, we need to multiply efforts by 6 times for drinking water access and 5 times for safe sanitation for all. With only 5 years remaining to achieve 2030 agenda, the number of people affected by water and sanitation challenges continues to rise. In this situation, inaction is not an option. It is time to deliver concrete action and ensure water and sanitation for all. Strengthen water and sanitation regulatory systems are enabler of progress in water and sanitation sector. Effective regulation allows us to plan, ensure, and monitor action and resources required for meaningful impact. Regulation is not a barrier. It is a catalyst of progress. This is where the global call to action plays a significant role. First, it promotes a strong enabling environment for water and sanitation regulation. Beyond advocating for robust regulatory framework, it addresses the key challenges of regulation establishment and implementation, capacity building, and financing. In this regard, we must use the global call to action to intensify efforts and scale up support to strengthening water and sanitation regulation at regional, national, and local level. Second, it emphasizes the need of multi-stakeholders partnership. Water is essential to all. Hence, it is the responsibility of all. In the making of water and sanitation regulation, the involvement of all actors is imperative, from governments, private sectors, academia, civil societies, women, youth, and all. Without inclusive partnership, water and sanitation regulation will not be fit for purpose and will be left unimplemented. And last, the call underscores the importance of long-term viability. Regulation is not the end goal. The true objective is to ensure that regulation become instruments of progress. I commend the call on its focus to the continuation and sustainability of action, seeing water and sanitation as agendas of present and the future. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, once again, I congratulate WHO and the International Water Association for this timely initiative. I look forward to the successful implementation of the call, encouraged by the wide support it has already gained. I thank you very much. Colleagues.
Good morning, distinguished colleagues. Thank you to the WHO and IWA for the invitation to participate in this call to action, a real honor. And today we stand at a pivotal moment in history. With 5 years, only 5 years remaining to achieve SDG 6, that is ensuring water and sanitation for all, we face an uncomfortable truth. We are not on track. I will first echo and not repeat what some of the previous speakers have said. First, regulation drives universal access. Second, regulation ensures financial sustainability. And third, regulation improves service quality and accountability. And let me be clear, regulation is not just bureaucratic red tape. It is the backbone of sustainable water and sanitation services. World Bank research across 40 countries shows that effective regulation serves as the critical bridge between policy intentions and service delivery. This has been confirmed by work done by many of the organizations represented in this call to action, and today, ADERASA, ALOAS, IWA, LIS-Water, and others. But the focus of my intervention today will be on the crisis, and this is at the core of the call to action. First, we are not just facing a water crisis. We are confronting multiple interconnected crises that make effective governance absolutely essential. And I will briefly go through some of these crises. The first one, of course, is climate change, which is making water resources increasingly unpredictable. Regulation provides the framework for adaptive management, demand management, and resilient infrastructure planning. Without it, utilities cannot make the long-term investments needed for climate adaptation. The second one, of course, is rapid urbanization and the pressure it puts on the utilities to continuously expanding the services to new areas. Without regulation, there is no framework and there is no rationale for utilities addressing the needs of the new people coming to cities. Third, and this is sometimes not duly taken into account, fiscal and financial constraints. In the current multiple crisis, in many countries, it means that public resources alone cannot finance universal access. Regulation is the key to unlocking private and blended finance by providing the certainty and risk mitigation that investors require. Fourth, political instability and fragility make regulation even more crucial. In conflict-affected states, like for instance Yemen, to mention one, even limited regulatory oversight of informal service providers helps maintain basic services and prevent health crises. This call to action represents our collective commitment to prioritize regulatory development as a cornerstone of the SDG 6 strategy. We must move beyond seeing regulation as a nice-to-have technical detail and recognize that it has the fundamental infrastructure that makes everything else possible. The choice before us is stark. Either continue with business as usual and watch SDG 6 slip further from our grasp, or embrace regulation as the game changer that can transform our sector's performance. The multiple crises we face are not obstacles to progress. They are urgent reminders that we cannot afford weak governance and ineffective service delivery. The time for action is now. The tool we need is regulation, and the goal we can achieve is water and sanitation for all. Thank you.
So I pass the floor now. I'll go to the second part of our session number 2. That's the discussion panel. I will invite Juan Martinelli from ADERASA and Kariuki Mugo from WaterAid. They can, turn on their cameras and we may begin with the discussion panel. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Isabela.
Thank you, Isabela.
Yes. It's a pleasure to share the perspective of ADERASA, the Association of Water and Sanitation Regulators of the Americas. First, we would like to mention that ADERASA supports peer learning and capacity building through technical working groups like benchmarking tools. We've been working with LIS-Water and the Inter-American Development Bank through a platform called WaterGov. We've also contributed in gathering information regarding utilities and publishing our benchmarking report that represents the status of water services in our region. We believe in regional exchanges among member regulators. We have developed practical solutions and we're working to tailor them to the regional's diversity, including approaches for performance regulation, stakeholder engagement, and crucially, tariff setting frameworks that balance sustainability with affordability. Second, regional collaboration is essential, we believe. It allows us to scale best practices, redistribute technical resources, and speak with a stronger collective voice in policy spaces. For example, many regulators in Latin America face pressure when setting tariffs. By working together, we strengthen our capacity to defend autonomous and evidence-based price regulation as a pillar of service resilience and equity. Third, national level improvements require more technical tools. We need high-level political commitment to empower regulators with clear legal mandates, especially to set tariffs, secure independent financing, and protect vulnerable populations. Human capital development and regional platforms like ADERASA are a vital partner in that process. Fourth, the call to action is a timely opportunity for our members. It gives us a shared language and framework to align national reforms with global resilience goals. It also elevates regulation from a technical function to a development enabler. The main opportunity is visibility and engagement. The main obstacle remains institutional fragmentation and persistent underfunding of regulatory functions. To close, let me echo what we've been seeing across our members. When regulators have the autonomy to set tariffs transparently, enforce standards, and engage users, services improve, resilience increases, and trust grows. ADERASA is committed to helping our region move from commitment to action, and we welcome collaboration from across the global network. Thank you, Isabel.
And Kariuki.
Thank
Você é o
you,
próximo.
Isabela. Thank you, Isabela, and good afternoon, everyone. Strong and functional regulatory systems are directly linked to progress in national drinking water and sanitation services. WaterAid believes that strengthening systems to become robust and resilient, including strong regulation, is a critical driver to attaining universal access. Second, WaterAid believes in government commitment to meeting SDG 6. From a governance and management perspective, you cannot manage what you cannot measure. Therefore, regulation, being at the heart of monitoring and accountability of institutions and service providers, plays a critical role in ensuring upward and downward accountability, and so is its role in accelerating universal services by governments. Third, development financing is at the heart of our work in WaterAid. Needless to say, regulators are at the heart of ensuring effective pricing and cost recovery, helping build financially sustainable services, besides incentivizing and creating a credible market for investments. For WaterAid, embracing and championing this call to action aligns with our strategic aims and offers pathways to achieve our ambitious targets of reaching 400 million people with sustainable wash services and mobilizing USD 15 billion more annually. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kariuki and Juan. We have a few minutes for this discussion panel. So both institutions participated in developing the call to action document, right? So how do you assess this development process? How could you share your experience with the participants of this session here? So Juan, perhaps you could speak first and tell us about ADERASA's perspective, and then Kariuki can provide the WaterAid perspective. So how was it developing the call to action for both?
Thank you, Isabella. I think that it was a very interesting process from ADERASA's perspective. We think that the opportunity to exchange with members of the water sector across the globe has given us a new insight of what are the global challenges we are facing. We can see that many of our obstacles and many of the requirements that the sector needs to strengthen its services, to widen its the provision of water services across our different communities are similar. We have thanks to this platform, we have grown closer together with our partners in Africa, for example, and we have started exchanging our experiences and seeing how a global platform can provide us with the necessary spaces to learn from each other and also support our political challenges as well. We think that regulatory entities need to grow in independence, in technical capacities, in order to provide trustable services for our own communities, and therefore help utilities, not in a contentious way, but in a collaborative way, help them strengthen their role as service providers. So we think that this process has been very insightful, and it has helped us reach across the globe to learn new things, and discover ways to topple those challenges in a more effective way.
Obrigada, Juan. Kariuki.
Thank you, Isabela. For WaterAid, this process has been very beneficial for two critical reasons. Number one is that we have been less active in the WASH regulation space. So this has given us some kind of a launching pad to collaborate with other partners and to learn from what has been happening around the sector, and to be able to contribute to that during its drafting. And at this stage where we are beginning to champion it is a great opportunity for us. Secondly, WASH system strengthening is at the heart of our work, and regulation is an integral part of WASH system strengthening. So we are seeing a great opportunity for us to contribute our expertise at subnational level, national level, and at regional and global levels. So for us, we are really inspired to be here and working with all stakeholders to start raising or elevating the debate of WASH regulatory system across the WASH sector. So we see opportunities, we see strategic alignment, we see opportunities for collaboration, and I think we will discuss more about that as we go along. But it's a really exciting moment for us. It's a start of a journey. So yeah, we are really inspired. Thank you.
And thank you, Juan, for your contributions in this panel. I'd like to pass now to our next session and to remind the participants that they can send their questions directly through the Q&A option. And Tutubo and Batucario will keep a look at the questions and try to answer them. And at the end, we are going to have a Q&A session in the coming minutes. Dave is the next one. To invite Otávio Hamdan from ADERASA and Christian Taylor from ALOAS to open their cameras so that we can proceed with the next part of our event. And now we are going to see the contributions and reflections of these partners, of these main partners that we have had in the elaboration of the call to action. And without any specific order, I would like to pass the floor to Otávio, and Otávio after that, Ximena and Christian. Perfect, Isabela. Thank you so much. Thank you, International Water Association and the WHO for the invitation so that I can share a little bit of my reflections about this call to action. I think it is important to think about our agency as a regulatory agency and also an association of regulatory agencies, which has been working to be a coordinator of this process in Brazil. So our idea as an association is to actually deal with everything that is being done by call to action and try to apply this within our country. We understand that the coordination of these activities is key so that we can effectively create call to action, something that is not only in paper, but that becomes effectively something live in other countries around the world. So our perception, our understanding is that to a certain extent, we have to do this coordination, including all the stakeholders in the discussion of the topics, and to see what each stakeholders in Brazil and abroad can do to actually make things be not only in the paper, but also in real life. What we see in the document become real. And the first step that we have to take, the first initiative, is that It's going to take place at the end of this year between the 26th and 28th of November, where we're going to have the ABAR Congress, which is the greatest regulatory congress of the country, where we are going to have a specific session to address the topics brought in the call to action document. So the idea is to put all the actors involved together to debate, and so that we can outline what is the role that which one will have within the scope, and what we have advanced, what we have to advance a little bit more, so that we can actually establish and make available all the services in our country. Brazil has a scope that is a little bit different, so to speak, when it comes to regulations. We have the SDO to be followed, but we also have national goals that have been established through laws and standards established by our National Agency of Water and Sanitation. So we are trying to follow these two objectives, so which is a little bit more international through the SDO and some of the national objectives as well through our federal laws and resolutions created by our national agency. I think that in a preliminary way, a preamble to what I would like to say is what I said. Thank you so much, Otávio. Next.
For the invitation. It's helpful to hear the experience shared by the previous speakers as Kariuki and Juan, because I think their points confirm an important fact that the strengthening water and sanitation regulation is urgent and possible when everyone works together with clear commitment. So as a core partner, LIS-Water is proud to support the call to action and also to contribute with practical tools that help make regulatory strengthening a reality. One of our key contributions is WaterGov, a powerful tool and a structured process designed to assess, benchmark, and improve governance systems for water and sanitation. And I think some countries that are here knows the WaterGov tool. So this WaterGov starts with a rigorous self-assessment that allows each institution to clearly diagnose where they stand and, more importantly, where and how to improve. So it is not just a measurement tool, it's a roadmap for action, from legal and institutional reforms to better interagency coordination or target capacity building. Already, just to comment, already 8 countries as Portugal, Mozambique, Peru, Belize, Brazil, Paraguay, Bolivia, and Cabo Verde have completed the assessment, and several are now developing concrete action plans based on validated data. So this is where WaterGov and the call to action are fully aligned. While the call mobilizes global momentum and commitment, WaterGov equips countries with the knowledge and tools to act strategically and systematically. And beyond WaterGov, LIS-Water plays a strategic role in strengthening regulatory systems globally too, because with the support of the government of Portugal, LIS-Water launched the Global Coalition on Water Regulation at the UN 2023 Water Conference in New York. So this initiative complements and amplifies the shared ambition of the call to action to strengthen regulatory systems. So we have worked to build synergies among regulators, support multi-level collaboration between governments and regulatory authorities, develop practical tools like training videos created during the first phase that we have at the Breakfast Slack, and now it's available in our Knowledge Hub. We have also published a good practice action guide with concrete recommendations for both regulators and policymakers. And in that sense, LIS-Water work complements that call to action by equipping countries, as I said, with tools and knowledge needed to turn global commitment into effective local action. Thank you. Obrigada, Ximena. Christian?
Thank you, Isabela. Good evening for everyone. I would like to share my insights from Latin America. As you all know, we are dealing with extreme climate events with water scarcity in some regions, and at the same time, water demand is increasing, and we still have low water and sanitation coverage, in particular in Latin America. It's in this context that we have to adapt the regulatory frameworks, changing into account climate change, decarbonization, reuse of water, nature-based solutions, emerging contaminants, etc. We had to strengthen regulators. They had to be more independent, reducing political interference, and they had to manage his own resources. And also the members of these regulators had to be merit-based selection. Engagement between regulators and utilities is crucial. Establishing feasible standards and also financial incentives mechanisms are necessary, encouraging utilities to improve in terms of operational efficiency. It's very important at this time. We have to encourage intergovernmental cooperation for better planning and strategic investment to deal with climate change. Our challenge is to ensure water availability for future generations. And cooperations between utilities, regulator, multilateral development banks, governments, and civil society is a key role in the success of water and sanitation management. IWA, in that case, is a good platform to work on that, and is working on that. And these are all the reasons why we are pleased to support this call to action. Thank you, Isabela.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you, Ximena, and thank you, Otávio. We have some minutes left in our session for this part of the launch of call to action, and I would like to ask a question to the three of you. You work with different levels related to regulations. So we have people in Brazil, Argentina, and we have Ximena with a little bit more global point of view. How do you see these regulatory parameters? How can they be central to strengthen both the water and sanitation regulatory issues, and how these practices are being developed in this more global environment, and how they can be transferred to the national level in this context that is more local?
Well, Isabela, in the case of Argentina, we are now in a privatization process, and we are now reviewing the frameworks, regulation framework. So in that case, we have, as I already said, we have to be the parameters more feasible standards to be according to the capacity of each utility. We are working on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. Otávio, from the point of view of Brazil, we are currently trying to define indicators, performance indicators, and standards. So our National Water Agency and Sanitation is trying to see what indicators should be monitored. And in this process, the municipalities are doing an update of their municipal plans for sanitation, so that are so we have a national need to be met. So these municipalities are creating new indicators to be monitored, new standards that are going to be assessed about the services. These new indicators are mandatory, so they have to be measured. And the idea is to later on, after we finish at the municipal level and we have the contracts of service provision, we are going to think about indicators to be monitored by the regulatory institutions. So annually, these parameters will be assessed, and this information will be passed to the national agencies so that we have a monitoring of the quality of the services in our country. And then we create a global connection with the national reality because what we have in terms of the ODS, the SDO to be reached until 2030, Brazil has decided to expand a little bit our national goal. So it goes up to 2033 with 90% of coverage of this sanitation services and 99% of water supply. But there is still a bias and some steps to be made to meet the SDO. Thank you.
Yes. WaterGov, for example, provides a structured approach with standardized indicators. So this allows countries worldwide to assess and improve governance consistently. Also, this standardization, like documenting and sharing clear parameters, like creates common frameworks that countries and regions can use for benchmarking and learning are very useful. And also maintaining core standards parameters are adapted to fit local contexts with the WaterGov, respecting differences in culture, economy, and political environments. So international training programs also, such as our new program that we are launching, this LIS-Water Summer School, empowering professionals, young water professionals from various countries to learn and exchange best practice and accelerating and adopt impacts are best practices can be scaled to an international level.
Thank you, Christian, Ximena, and Otávio, for your contributions at this part of our launch call to action. And now I would like to proceed to the next part of the event, which is the Q&A per se. And with that, I would like to proceed to the next slide, please. Thank you. I would like to introduce Kate. Kate is a leader in sanitation and water within MGO, and she contributes a lot with IWA as part of our advisory board in our projects for sanitation. And in this session, in this Q&A session, Kate will be responsible for moderating the Q&A, moderating the questions. And then I would like to invite our participants to keep contributing and asking their questions in the Q&A. Kate, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and we have some really amazing questions coming in the chat, as well as some that were submitted in advance with the registrations. So I'm going to start with a question from Alan Wyatt, and I see, Otávio, you're responding to this online, so I might call on you to also respond to it directly. But he's asking about getting the balance right between a collaborative approach between regulators and service providers and more of an inspector kind of approach where it's a little bit more adversarial. So Otávio, tell us where you think the correct kind of balance lies between in that relationship.
So it's hard to find this balance, but I have experienced both sides. Also about inspector, acting as an inspector, and also as in this way with a collaborative approach. And I really believe that the balance of both are important, and we really need to find the boundary between the inspector side and the collaboration side, because I think the inspection is important because you need to penalty the service provider for something that they did wrong or something like that. But it's also important to be open for the dialogue, because they need more than us how the services provider is providing, and also how it works. And we need also to be open to learn and to have this open dialogue to construct together the regulation, the better way to be effective. I think that's it. Juan raises the hand. I think he wants to compliment.
Oh, thank you. I think that really reflects a lot of what we've found through the roadmap and other things, where the role is really focusing on being enabling and a mix of carrot and stick, so enforcement, but also incentives and education as well. I'm going to turn to one of the other questions as well from Lesha Whitmer. It's an important one regarding informal service providers. Of course, we know in in rural areas or sometimes peri-urban areas. We have a lot of informal water and sanitation service providers. Would someone like to give us your thoughts on what's the best way to bring informal service providers under regulatory frameworks? I'm looking for someone to volunteer, or maybe I'll pick on one of you.
Okay, thank you, Kate, for the question. We have a lot of, in Argentina, we have a lot of informal services. Also in the regulated area from AySA, in the Buenos Aires metropolitan area, we have more than 500 informal services, no? Cooperatives and all that. And it will be good to have some normalization of the situation, no? As Ximena told, we have to adapt to the local context, no? We have from nothing to something, no? We have to work on intermediate standards for this kind of cooperatives or informal services to improve a little these services, no? Because you have a big gap between big companies like AySA, Buenos Aires, and the small cooperatives around there, okay?
That makes a lot of sense. So I think the message there is not pushing those informal service providers further outside of the legal framework, but progressively normalizing and bringing them into that, recognizing they are filling a gap in the market, albeit informally. I'm going to turn to some of the questions that are that came in earlier now, and perhaps use my chair's privilege to pick on you, Ximena, and to ask about sanitation and wastewater regulation in particular, because we know this is, you know, an area that nearly always lags what's happening in drinking water. So yeah, what do you see the sort of opportunities in sanitation regulation, and particularly around wastewater reuse, which I think has been a lot done on that in your home country of Peru, please?
Yeah, in many countries, some services are very difficult, but this one, it's a very big problem in Peru. So since LIS-Water with WaterGov, we have first to identify the problem, understand how they work, and next support to create a legal and institutional framework that includes a very good provision of this type of services. So it's good to build trust and cooperation in this type of services, and understand the benefits of regulation also.
Fantastic, thank you. Sort of linking, I guess, with reuse, Christian mentioned the potential around the climate agenda for additional reuse, but I think in general, climate resilience is something that's challenging an already difficult regulatory environment. Maybe I could turn to you, Juan Luis, and just to get some perspectives on some of the challenges of establishing institutional and regulatory frameworks, and perhaps how those are further challenged with climate change.
Thank you very much, Kate. One of the things we're doing in ADERASA is we're betting on innovation to strengthen our mechanisms. We have discovered that, yes, it is important to adapt our regulatory framework to new challenges and specifically, for example, climate resilience, and adapt our regulatory entities to face those challenges in a more flexible and dynamic way. Of course, that is important. But we have also discovered that beyond the regulatory framework, it is important to build on instruments and innovation that help, tools that help us identify those limitations, to monitor more precisely how climate changes affect the service the provision of the water service. For example, in Peru, one of the things that we're betting on is we're monitoring how trucks deliver water. For example, if some infrastructure is interrupted, and in this way we can alert communities. Where is the water truck? At what stage is it? When will it arrive to your house? And in this way, what we can do as regulators is make information more available to communities so that they can have certainty on when the service is going to come back if it is interrupted due to a climate disruption, for example. So we think that it is not only about strengthening the framework, the legal and regulatory framework, but it's also in helping developing tools, dynamic tools that can make regulatory entities more at the forefront of the climate challenges that they will face.
Fantastic, that's excellent. So what I'm hearing is that you're talking about flexible and dynamic systems and innovation, where I think sometimes when we speak of innovation, people tend to think about the technology innovation, but really what you described there was a whole kind of system innovation of including the way information and monitoring and those whole of system kind of approaches. Thank you. I'm going to turn now to you, Kariuki, because you spoke about the work that WaterAid is doing and being a civil society organization. Clearly, you're not doing the regulation per se, but you're working with lots of those actors through your system strengthening work and also on the service delivery end, and particularly in your subnational work. My question to you is, what do you really see the role of civil society organizations at large in advancing regulation and advancing the call to action?
Thank you very much, Kate. I see a number of things around promoting the call to action. Number one, from WaterAid perspective, we think it provides CSOs with legitimacy. As you know, regulation has been quite a sensitive area. A couple of years back, it was a government agenda. It's still a sensitive area in many parts of the world, and especially in Africa. And I think we have associations like ALOAS and partners like WHO, IWA, WaterAid, and others who are really working hard to make sure that regulation becomes central part of the conversation. So this call to action makes civil society organizations and other non-state actors part of the stakeholders who should be able to speak about regulation and support development of regulatory frameworks. So I think it's opening that space for all of us. The second thing is around raising CSO voice, and it's related to legitimacy. You see that previously, and even up to now, talking about regulation is like introducing some kind of public bureaucracy that is not necessary, is introducing control and bottlenecks in the system, which is contrary to what regulation is meant to do. So for us, I think civil society organizations and other non-state actors can now be able to sell regulation as a needed part of the system to accelerate universal access to wash services. Finally, I think this is going to open up opportunities for collaborative platforms. I think looking at how we developed this call to action, the participants in this webinar, the conversations that are already happening outside here, even before the launch, it shows that we're going to have a number of platforms emerging from subnational level to national level, regional and global level. So I think this opens up many opportunities to collaborate and to talk about regulation, and especially speaking to governments and trying to connect them with business and other service providers who are not comfortable in entering this space to help deliver SDG 6. Thank you.
Thank you, Kariuki. It's a really powerful point. I think lots of the CSOs are, working at a more of a community level than many organizations, and this point about breaking down some of the misconceptions or barriers to regulation where there might be a perception that it's a disabler is, I think, a really powerful role, along with the other ones you mentioned. I'm going to turn now in our last 5 minutes to a really thoughtful question from Stephen Senna online. It's on financing, which I have to say is not my strong point. So I'm going to read it to you, and perhaps one of you who feels most comfortable to respond could have a go. But the question is, regarding cost recovery and creating a credible market for investment, there are many investment instruments to mobilize all sources of finance and many examples going back for decades, yet we have few examples that are replicated or sustained either in public or private finance domain. I question why PES has been highlighted when there are many more direct and replicable financing opportunities around efficiency. As with any market regulation, it's critical to balance the public interest to ensure clear and reliable rules for the road for private capital to be effectively mobilized. So the question is, as tariffs will ostensibly underpin any finance, how will this call for action ensure a critical balance is factored into regulatory regimes, sorry, this is long, and tariff setting for commercial viability of public, private or PPP blended investment? So I think that the core of the question there is that how will that balance be factored into the tariff setting regimes? Who to make it attractive for private capital? Would someone like to have a go at that one? It's tough. Okay. Yeah, I think the financing part is challenging. So Stephen, maybe someone will write you online, or we can do this in our wrap up and get to the webinar. Oh, go Otávio, please.
It's not my area. I'm an engineer, but we are facing here in Brazil something similar because we have new indicators for the service providers, and we need to guarantee this balance of in this area of financing and something like that. And we are proposing for the service providers to adjust the contracts to the new framework, and then they are seeing the contract and balancing it again to put all the things that you need to put, for example, related to the call to action. In our case here, related to the indicators that you need to put in these indicators, in these contracts to because of the performance of the service providers. And I think it's the way, I think it's not the better answer, but it just comes to me to put this experience here from Brazil.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I can add to that, I think Otávio has put it correctly. This is also not my area, but I can also mention that, regulators sit at the interplay of service providers, policymakers, and consumers. So the critical role of regulators is to ensure fair play. And that includes ensuring that prices are right, cost recovery is ensured, and that the right enabling environment is also ensured for investors. So I think in terms of PPPs, I don't think it's a very special category if regulators are able to do their work and ensure that the market ensures fair competition, fair pricing, and cost recovery of services. So that is, and that marks the market entry and market sustainability for all service providers. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. That was well recovered from a tough start on that question. Okay, just one final question here now from Rachel Pellets. And it's about research. I think we've made some great progress with the roadmap that we're going to hear about and the call to action, but of course there are still gaps. So from the perspective of any of you here, when you think about the sort of research, what would be one of the key research questions that you think would be useful to have answered in order to take us a step forward on regulation? Would you like to have a crack at that one? I'll go ahead, Christian.
Okay. About research, you talk about research. Well, we have a lot of research organizations, no? In Latin America, we have a lot of Inter-American Association of Engineering, AIDS, for example, and we have IWA in a global way, and you have a lot of academies, universities, and I think that we have the possibility to develop this kind of standard, no? Develop different standards for each kind of context, for each kind of region, no? or particular situation, no? With a global vision, no? With a global vision to sustainability and all that, but with local standards to be sure that everyone is going to improve in terms of efficiency. I think that we can work on that.
Great, thank you. And I think there's so many elements of regulation, in fact, isn't there, that there's many places to dig into in terms of the research, and of course, as you highlight, calling on sort of local and global research entities to assist with that. Okay, thank you everybody. At this point, I'm going to wrap up the segment and hand over to David Truber, who's going to give us a summary of the roadmap for advancing sanitation regulation in particular. So thank you all, and over to you, Dave.
Thanks very much, Kate, and wow, what wonderful interventions and responses to the questions from our colleagues during the last Q&A and the previous sessions. Thanks very much. So with this brief intervention, we'd just like to take up for a moment the roadmap for advancing sanitation regulation. This is a new document developed by WHO in partnership with SOAS, WASAP, and UNICEF. It was launched earlier this month. Of course, SOAS is the Eastern and Southern Africa Water and Sanitation Regulators Association, and WASAP is Water and Sanitation for Urban Populations. So the roadmap was developed over the last couple of years in response to some key gaps highlighted in GLASS data. This is nothing new. We know that the regulation for sanitation, especially on-site systems, is still lagging behind. As well, we know from GLASS that countries that have more robust regulatory systems make quicker progress. So GLASS, of course, is the Global Analysis and Assessment of Sanitation and Drinking Water. It's the UN Water Initiative implemented by WHO. So the roadmap is designed to help countries move from having a little or no regulation to functioning, high-performing systems. And there are really world examples from Africa, Asia, and Europe, and Latin America in the document. It's based on a lot of interviews with regulators and utility managers and other experts globally, and has a full literature review offering both strategic principles and practical actions. In fact, many of the colleagues who are on this webinar today and the earlier one during the day provided inputs into the document. And we're also happy to have Sam Drabble from WASAP on the call tonight. He was really the pen behind the really wonderful document that's been put together. So it's a practical tool that countries can use to implement actions kind of within the context of the call to action. So what's at the heart of the roadmap? Well, it's structured around 6 core steps that are critical to strengthening sanitation regulation. It's quite small text. I hope you could read it, but as you can see from left to right, 1 through 6, these are steps that range from conducting a legal review to institutional frameworking, also looking at the accountability mechanisms in the country, to data systems, capacity building, and also adapting to emerging challenges like climate change, as we heard a little bit earlier today. And each step is supported by practical examples and guiding principles. So countries are encouraged to use the roadmap in a flexible, context-specific way. A number of the organizations on the call, in fact, today have contributed case studies to the document. So it's not a checklist, but it's really a guide that can be adapted to each country's starting point. It may be that one country might decide that action number 3, develop effective and funded accountability mechanisms, is where they're at, whereas others may feel that they need to actually start at the beginning and establish current legal basis for service regulation. And there are examples of full life cycle regulation from various countries in the document. Moving along, how does this connect with the call to action that we're launching today? This is just an example, and many of the other organizations and colleagues on the call may have activities, documents, implementation plans that can be maybe strengthened with the call to action as an umbrella for advocacy or political action. So the call to action asks us to move from commitment and to implementation. And this roadmap is one of the tools to help us do that. Countries can also use the roadmap to build or refine their own national regulatory plans. Again, the call to action asks for measurable, context-appropriate roadmaps. And as we've heard, there have been a lot of great examples, experiences about challenges and opportunities and successes. So these kinds of case studies are helpful in peer learning platforms for sharing and building capacity. RegNet, as Bruce Gordon mentioned earlier, is one platform, and there are others operated by IWA as well. So most importantly, the roadmap helps us link regulation with the broader goals, and we've heard these again discussed today. Equity and gender, as Lesha brought up, climate resilience and health, all of these are central to the roadmap and to the call to action. So you can see on the screen there the QR code as well as a link. And of course, if you go to the websites of SOAS, WASAP, UNICEF, or WHO, you can, of course, find this roadmap. And we hope you find it of interest and can put it to good use. So with that, we'd like to hand over now to the gentleman who started out our call today, Mr. Bruce Gordon, who is the head of the Water, Sanitation, Hygiene, and Health Unit at WHO, for some closing words. Bruce, over to you.
Okay, thanks so much, Dave. I just need permission to start my video in case anyone wants to see me. So let's see if that works. Let me know when you give me permission, but I did want to, oh, here you go. Okay, perfect, thanks. Great, fantastic. I wanted to return first to, I think it was Kariuki from WaterAid who said we can now sell regulation as part of a wash system. I think I got that quote right. And I say that because I think a lot of people on the call are believers in regulation, practitioners or international stakeholders that, understand the value of regulation. That's why you're on the call. There may be some people that are unconverted, and hopefully you're converted now. But I mean, we saw that already in many of the questions that were, I think, really fascinating technical questions about how to get the finances right or the tariff regulation. Of course, from a WHO perspective, it's the public health side of things that we're very interested in. And I think with that audience that we have today, all of you, we can be sure, and we saw in the morning session, morning Geneva time, that there was a huge consensus, right? I mean, it was really interesting to see those representatives, from private operators, public operators, global development organizations, investors, all sorts of external technical support agencies that are all kind of understanding, as I said earlier, and as people have reiterated, that regulation is really something that is a prerequisite to getting, as I think Gustavo said, it, universal access. So then the question is, what, again, we return to the call to action, and the call to action isn't to kind of solve all these technical problems. I mean, that we've talked a lot about communities of practice and peer sharing and all the experiences you've had, but the call to action is to bring this message to the governments and the decision makers. And that's where all of you come in, because we see the tool to action as, the call to action as a tool. Sorry about that. And the call to action, as you may notice, it's unbranded. It's all of us. It's a global public good. So please use it. And if you would like even more assistance in trying to advocate and argue for the value of regulation to extend and improve services and to get that critical support for the regulators, the regulatory function that is often under-resourced and can't do the wonderful things that it should be doing because of those resource constraints, or maybe sometimes the issue I think we heard about, whether it's something specific like political interference, or something where you may not be having the mandate to regulate as effectively as you might. So these are the kind of things we're hoping that can be done with the call to action. So what's next? Bring it into your constituency group, promote it. There's many different national and international events and processes where regulation, we're hoping, is mainstreamed. It's already been recommended as a key good practice for professionalizing services in a number of international reports and assessments. We've talked about how it came out of the UN 2023 conference on water and sanitation, but it also how we could potentially do quite a bit more on this. And there has been some discussions behind the scene at the UN 2026 conference and its preparatory processes. So it's all about taking this call to action and using it. And yes, we, you may sort of see IWA and WHO being a sort of secretariat, but we'll continue to kind of promote this and support all of you. But I think it's something that we all believe in together. So I just wanted to really, I think, Isabela, I will leave it to you to make sure you thank all the right people. But thank you, Isabela, because you may not thank yourself. But I was really, really pleased with the level of the discussion today and the ambition and the passion that we're seeing, even at a time in the world where, we are, resource constrained and we are facing challenges. But this is one modality that we feel we really should get behind. And so that's why we're all here today. So thank you very much. And over to you, Isabela.
Thank you, Bruce. Now I've been challenged, including all the people to thank, all the people that participated in the process. They all played a quite relevant role in the entire development process of the call to action. And now we have the duty of disseminating and promoting and working on the advocacy of the documents that have been generated. They're available in several languages, as you can see. So I was checking on our website list. There have been more than 40 partners that have been engaged in the preparation of the documents, and not just regulating agencies. All of the stakeholders, the ones that were interested in developing the call to actions, they all were truly engaged in the entire process journey. And once again, I would like to thank them all of those who were participating in both sessions, morning and afternoon. And the call to action is available to be downloaded and used. Please share, promote, and you should also discuss the possible actions on how we can further advance with the agenda in the forthcoming years. And as Dave said, and as Bruce said, it's going to be addressed on the water conference by UN. So let's see the next slide. And with that, I would like to complete and conclude the second session of the call to action. And I would like to thank you all for participating. Thank you for asking your questions. And I hope you have enjoyed. The materials will be made available online and will be here available to you if you have any questions or any remarks to further contribute to the dissemination of the call to action. So thank you very much.